tearful, oh his remorse. Oceans you filled for yourself alone. Fluorescence and that now dethroned. So pity your river, not a drop for him. Your high ground's a shadowy west end. Samsonite pack with your selfish walls. No room for the tears, only you.
Hey guys, it's Mo from Mo in the Deep End, and we are going to be talking about first the plea deal that Sarah Boone rejected. And honestly, I think a lot of us are scratching our heads about why she rejected this particular plea deal. Uh, we will get into what was, kind of the give and take of it, the negotiation, sort of. But it really is quite interesting that, you know, Sarah either can't see or refuses to see that optically she is probably not going to have the best time in this case. That regardless of the outer packaging she puts on, even if they had the entire glam squad from RuPaul's, drag race, it's not going to change what's on the inside. And as soon as they play those videos, she is going to have a really hard time overcoming those, well, her actions, her demeanor, all of this. So let's get into the plea deal first. Sarah Boone is set to face trial. Now, this is an article from True Crime Murder in the Morning. Uh, doesn't say when it was actually published. Oh, October 8th. So she was set to, go on trial this week. However, we do know it's been delayed. Now, we know most of this. The defense, led by James Owens, Boone's ninth attorney, intends to argue Boone's actions were the result of battered spouse syndrome, citing a history of abuse between the couple. Quote, "This was a toxic, tumultuous relationship with a record of domestic disturbances," Owens stated. Boone's defense will seek to highlight years of DV and arrests as contributing factors in her actions. Boone's has been outspoken in her own defense, writing numerous letters to presiding judge Michael Kranick and even placing a personal advertisement to find a new attorney. Owens, who volunteered to represent her after Boone's previous 8 attorneys withdrew, either due to her behavior, ethical, conflicts, or because they had, the first couple ones they had represented George in the earlier cases. So it's not like, she ran off 9 lawyers, as much as it's fun to say. There were some lawyers with legitimate conflicts of interest that, they could not cover her. Now, Owens has volunteered to represent Boone. Quote, "The details of this case are complex and are more complex than they appear on the surface," Owens commented. Sarah Boone has experienced a significant trauma, and we believe that played a role in the events leading up to Mr. Torres's death. On October 7th, Boone rejected a plea agreement that would have allowed her to plead guilty to manslaughter and serve 15 years in prison. By rejecting the offer, she risks a minimum in the scoring of 22.5 years behind bars, with a potential for a life sentence if convicted. Boone's decision to proceed to trial underscores her desire to tell her side of the story, despite the considerable risks involved. This is insanity, absolute insanity. Look, I get that it is fundamentally, I think, an inability for her to accept responsibility. I get that, but she is gambling, and I'm just going to call it like I see it. If I were a juror and I went in knowing nothing about this case, and then I saw those 2 videos, that's the end. That's the end. I don't know how you spin that. And the state is actually one of the motions in limine from the state is actually going against this whole battered spouse syndrome defense. I think there was a very good reason that her first attorney, right before she was going to trial, dropped this defense. I don't think that you can there's too much dissidence to have Sarah Boone be the battered spouse. And I wish that, you could say, hey, we'll believe her, we'll believe this. I believe facts. It looks like they were both mutually abusive to each other. I have seen, different reports. I've seen the videos that have been put out by other content creators. I do not think that this is going to sell. And I don't know if Owens could not get her to understand this, if this is why they were arguing in the prisoner note. I don't know. But she will stubbornly refuse to accept any responsibility here. And it's going to end up, if I were a betting gal, with her life in prison. Life in prison. Now, the trial's date was initially set for October the 7th, but the forecasted hurricane obviously led the court to close, leading to a 1-week delay. Jury selection is now scheduled to begin on October 14th, with trial expected to draw significant public attention due to the disturbing nature of the evidence and Boone's ongoing claims of self-defense. Boone's defense team will face a challenging case as prosecutors seek to use video evidence to portray Boone as callous and unremorseful. Yeah, I mean, at what has Sarah at any point beyond saying, "Do you want me to feel worse?" actually acknowledged that, Jorge died and she was a part of it? Boone's, let's see here. Prosecutor Linda Driscoll stated, quote, "These videos speak volumes. You can see the victim pleading for his life. The defendant is simply ignoring him. That kind of indifference speaks to intent. The case's unique details, combined with Boone's defense strategy, have captured the interest of the public as the trial approaches. Both sides are prepared to delve into the complicated dynamics of Boone and Torres's relationship. The outcome will rest with a jury that will weigh Boone's claims of past, DV versus the prosecution's argument of deliberate and fatal neglect." Now, we will go to the state's motion to basically take away this cockamamie. In my opinion, this is the infuriating part for me. This is the part where I have no chill for Sarah, because you don't get to take, other people's stories, other people's victimhoods, other people's experience in really bad relationships, put them on like a skin suit and wear them. It's just absolutely perplexing that this would be your ultimate goal. But the state has decided to say, hold on there just a second, because there are some big flaws, there are some big issues in this case. If you want to go this way, let us explain to you exactly what we're going to bring against you. So the state's motion in limine to exclude battered spouse syndrome evidence or exclude mention of battered spouse syndrome evidence until the defendant testifies to a justifiable use of deadly force. So the problem with the battered spouse syndrome is it's really more of an explainer. It's required that you have to have a self-defense claim, which Sarah has thus till now not said that this was in self-defense, so that she locked him in the suitcase for self-defense. Battered spouse syndrome explains why someone may suddenly attack or take deadly force to a partner when, by all outward appearances, it seems that they were free to go. Think of a woman who has, been just abused, or a man who's been abused for a long time. There are no locks on the door. There are no, shackles keeping you inside the house on the most case. But there are internal shackles. There are, scars and fear and bars on your soul that make it so incredibly difficult to, you know, walk out that door, to leave. So that's the entire kind of origin of where battered spouse syndrome came from. Comes now the state of Florida by and through the undersigned assistant state attorney and the state, and alleges as follows. Introduction. 1. The defendant has filed a notice, an amended notice, of her intent to rely on battered spouse syndrome evidence in this case. 2. Battered spouse syndrome is not actually a defense to a crime. So this is going to go on to explain what I just tried to tell you in non-legal speak. The introduction of battered spouse syndrome evidence is to support a self-defense theory, is not for the purpose of justifying the defendant's misperception of reality, or to explain why an unreasonable belief was nonetheless justifiable due to her condition. Rather, the Florida Supreme Court has sanctioned the use of battered spouse syndrome to show why the defendant's actions were reasonable. Uh, Masked folklore, I don't know. What I will, sorry, Foker. What I will say is that I did a review of the autopsy report, and there was a very significant head wound, I believe, on his left side, but don't quote me. A head wound of that significance, if it were as lawyer Owens is trying to put out now, that happened at some point prior to the evening that he got in the suitcase. To my non-medical doctor reckoning, I think he would have been incapacitated, either disorientated or, somewhat unable to control his faculties with the depth and kind of severity of that wound. Then she could have got him in, but it is pretty hard to self-defense suitcase someone. I don't know how we're going to do the math. On a plus note in housekeeping, I do have a smaller whiteboard that has a stand that I will be bringing in. So we have a whiteboard of truth, and, it will be fine, I think. If I can put it together. Let's be real, guys. I am not a great putter together person, but I'm much too stubborn to ask Mr. Mo for help when I know I can do it all by my own self. I am, in fact, an adult four-nager. Those of you who have 4-year-olds at home will understand. I do it my own self, even if I would do it wrong. To show, in spite of a reasonable perception of danger from the battering spouse, the battered defendant would remain in a home with her batterer, where she may resort to the exertion of force against him or her to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm. Now, this is Eugenio versus State, Florida 2nd Division, 2023. So this is the case that Owens has been kind of sampling and bringing up. I do believe in that particular case, a woman was with an abusive partner. I guess he had done some terrible things to her. He fell asleep and she blew him away, as far as I remember of that case. But I will research that to make sure that, that was the correct case. Facts. 3. The defendant has presented several accounts of what happened on February 23rd, 2020. She made a 911 call at approximately 1 p.m. on February 24th, 2020. She spoke to a patrol deputy on body-worn camera shortly thereafter, provided a statement to detectives a few hours later on February 24th, 2020, and provided, thank you. As anyone new here will know that I am terrible with names. There is a reason I gave all of my girl children 4-letter names that end with an A, because I am a terrible, terrible person at names, but I'm trying my best. She also provided a second statement to detectives on February 25th, 2020. 4. The defendant retained Dr. Julie Harper as one of her battered spouse syndrome experts in 2020. Over the course of the next several years, Dr. Harper interviewed the defendant about the events of February 23rd, 2020 multiple times. Exhibit A at the hearing on this motion will be Dr. Harper's deposition, which was taken on October 1st, 2024. The state would direct the court to pages 5, 37 through 39, 41 through 42, 44, 47 through 50, 52, 54 through 56, 66 through 67, 80 through 81, and 95. Now, I do wish that we were given copies of these reports, but they kind of just go in the file, and any sort of expert report, anything that they have written, does not come to the jury, and I don't know that it's something we can get. I will ask Jedi Jess. She is kind of like my Jedi master of finding all the documents. I thank her so much because I am dead awful at it. Now, Dr. Harper's deposition for the defendant's statements about February 23rd, 2020. Now, I do believe that the state's attorney was alluding to this as to probably an underlining sort of foreshadowing that Sarah has changed her story several times. And I really think that it's unfortunate for Sarah strategically that she is using the same doctor that she saw in 2020. The problem for Sarah is that this woman, or Dr. Harper, saw her with her first kind of conjuring of what my defense is going to be in this particular case. And now she's had 4 years to think of a kind of different variation on the subject. And those differences are really going to be quite, I think, detrimental to Sarah pulling this off. The state, or 5, the state retained Dr. Tanya Werner as its battered spouse syndrome expert. Dr. Werner evaluated the defendant on October 2nd, 2024, and Dr. Werner was deposed on October 4th, 2024. Exhibit B at the hearing on this motion will be Dr. Werner's deposition. The state would direct the court to pages 75 through 79 of Dr. Werner's deposition for the defendant's statements about February 23rd, 2020. So again, you're going to have two different experts. And even if Dr. Julie Harper was, retained by the defense, she is not going to be able, as an expert, you lose all credibility if you shade your testimony in such a way that it's obvious. Now, my guess is that neither of these women are going to be doing that. So it will be very interesting. I hope that they put out this hearing, because I do want to see the deposition. I do want to see this, because this is going to be a do or die moment for Sarah Boone's defense. If this, battered spouse, diminished culpability kind of thing, although that's not the technical legalese of it. But if this particular strategy falls down, I don't know what the heck they are going to do. I am not a super smart lawyer. I am just a person that sees things and calls balls and strikes. Even though I don't know sports ball, I do know how to call, the good ideas and the bad ideas. 6, the state is not asking the court to make any credibility determination about the defendant's statements to the doctors. That would be for the jury to do, in the full context of a cross-examination with the defendant's statements to law enforcement. 7, what the state is asserting as a matter of law, what the defendant told the doctors does not entitle her to a self-defense instruction, nor does it entitle her to introduce evidence of prior instances of violence, reputation evidence of the decedent's violence, or battered spouse syndrome evidence to help the jury understand why what she did was objectively reasonable. 8, the defendant told the doctors because of past violence between her and the decedents, she had a generalized fear every day that the decedent would cause her seriously bodily harm or unalive her. 9, however, on this particular day, the decedent did not make any overt action, even in the slightest, that made her believe that he would cause her serious bodily harm or death. Welcome, Tammy and Kovia. 10, according to the defendant, when she and the decedent woke up, the decedent wanted to drink alcohol. She did not, so in order to distract the decedent, she suggested they instead clean the defendant's townhome, which they did. 11. At the conclusion of cleaning, the decedent still wished to consume alcohol, so the two of them began consuming alcohol. I'm sure you had to twist Sarah's arm behind her back. She was like, "No, not the Boone's farm. No, no, give me the Bible." I mean, I'm sure that's how she's going to tell it, only she's going to do it like this. I was terrified to death that he was going to be mean to me, so I put away my Bible and I drank that Boone's farm. Give me a freaking break. 12. The alcohol they consumed was a Chardonnay bottle by Woodbridge. Now, does anyone know how big that bottle was? I mean, because she seems like blitzed in those videos. I mean, she's got that's how I feel when you're cheating on me. That's my name. Don't wear it out. I mean, how much booze were in those bottles? Was it one of those big old Ernest Julio, jug o' booze? I call those spring break survival size. But, and I joke about that because honest to goodness, I am the biggest lightweight in the entire world. I cut all of my booze with diet, sparkling water. I use Clearly American from Walmart. Let me just tell you, if you like, White Claws, just get you a bottle of Tito's and some Clearly Americans and cut out the middleman. Oh, it's not Ernest. Yeah, the big old giant jug that you just put in there. Now, honest to God, I have thought about getting those when summer starts. I mean, I am not gonna lie to you. There are some days where my youngest, most feral almost pushes me to like, why can't I day drink? Oh, because I'm terrible at it. 13. In order to prevent the decedent from becoming upset or sad, she kept him diverted by smoking cigarettes with him, drinking, enjoying each other's company. X to doubt. Uh, Perhaps using the dartboard on her porch and doing arts, crafts, and puzzles. 14. Although it apparently would upset the decedent, the defendant suggested that he call his daughter, who did not like talking to him when he was drinking, or that he call his brother to tell his brother that the decedent had dragged the defendant down the stairs the night before. Okay, I'm going to stop right here. Sarah, this is abusive to me emotionally. Okay, you already know that when his daughter talks to him and he is under the influence, it hurts her and she doesn't like it. How dare you involve a child in something you know will hurt your partner? This sounds like the most petty and some of the most deviant stuff that you would do to try to get a partner to be antagonistic, to get them down. I mean, that's like suggesting, I don't know if you guys know, but Mr. Mo's mom has been dealing with some medical health issues. And sometimes it's not at all, easy to talk about. That would be like me getting him into a really depressed state, getting him all boozed up, and encouraging him to talk to his mom. It's just absolutely vindictive, it's cunning, and it's cruel. These are the very little emotionally abusive things that I have seen sprinkling from Sarah, and I haven't seen a lot of George. I'm going to be honest, I haven't delved deeply into his past or anything like that. But what I do notice right here is that she is pushing him to call his daughter. So we're bringing a child into this who has already stated, Dad, I really don't like it when you're drinking. I know when you're messed up, it bothers me. She's encouraging him to do that. Then she's also encouraging him to to call his brother and, try to litigate some kind of fight they had where she allegedly was dragged down the stairs the night before. These are two things that I would guarantee almost anyone, either, if they were a little tipsy or on their way to full on drunk, is going to put them into a spiral. If these are two big things, these are big stressors, and she's wanting to, make sure that he's in a good headspace. They're doing puzzles, they're having fun. To suggest that he call his daughter while drunk, or suggest that he, call his brother, the family that hates her, mind you, the family that calls her the white devil, and, she was so terrified of. She's wanting to bring the brother in to make sure Jorge knows how terrible of a person he is. These are very manipulative emotional things that I think are not going to play well. 15. Having done these playful activities for numerous hours, there came a point when the defendant and the decedent were sitting on her couch in the downstairs living room, and the decedent tagged her and said, "You're it." From past games of hide and seek, the defendant understood this to mean that he wanted to play hide and seek. She begrudgingly engaged in the game, as with everything else, to placate the decedent. No, he was probably desperately grasping. You guys have seen Sarah in the interrogation. You know she will stay on a fact until you are basically bombarded with unintentionallys. Imagine having someone, constantly ragging on you. I'm sure she kept bringing up the fight from the day before, that was alleged to happen, that, he dragged her down the stairs, and he was probably like, "You know what? Let's play a game. Let's do something else. I need to run away from you and have there be a logical reason." Having Okay, let's see here. 16, she ran up to the shower after becoming cold and perhaps some misunderstanding about the rules of hide and seek. And this again kind of negates this. We have always played hide and seeks. We're a fun, loving couple. If they both don't understand what is going on and what the rules are. Ooh, I like it. Belabored gaslighting. And thank you, Northwest. I thought that both of their names were up. And you guys check out Publicly Buzzed. Hopefully he has internet back. I don't know. I always kind of in my own little world trying to set things up for tomorrow. But hopefully you've gotten internet back, or it will be on the way soon, and we can get back to having murder church. Dang it. I'm telling you, we need a suitcase shaman. And I am not over here sitting down trying to figure out how to make a paper mache shaman buffalo hat with a little Samsonite stuck to it. I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I'm just saying I am in the mental trying to figure out how I can arts and craft my way out. And this is exactly what abusive people will do. She wanted to Abusive people, male or female, will want to isolate you. They will want to make you seem like everyone is against you. No one is going to be able to turn to you for help. They will want to bring up your worst possible traits, your worst possible actions in front of your family to try to get them to turn against you. It's absolutely a mental screw. And it is so incredibly life altering at that time to have to both walk on eggshells and know that anything and everything you have done, in your less than perfect moments can be brought out at any time to kind of kick you while you're down, figuratively speaking, YouTube. Now, apparently they were a little confused about how to play hide and seek. She left the upstairs shower and returned downstairs to find the decedent placing himself in the suitcase to hide. At the time of his death, the decedent was only 103 pounds and had an alcohol level of 0.138. Now, I am not sure that how well George was able to function at a higher level of, intoxication. I can tell you at that level, Mo would be asleep or having baby number 7. Like, there is very little that happens when Mo is incredibly tipsy. And usually there is that scary little stage where I think I can dance. I cannot. I look like Elaine having, the hiccups. It's terrible. But there's that then going to sleep or possibly having, child number 7. That's about all that happens. So I don't know how he was able to function. I do not believe, regardless of this being her telling of the story, that George willingly got into that suitcase. I don't think so. I think most people have a natural disinclination of going into a small, tiny place, not having any control, and, you know, being at the hands of an aggressive person. That just maybe the alcohol was enough to kind of dull those kind of warning red flags. But I don't know. When you live with someone like Sarah, when you live with someone who is constantly and forever, you know, dogging on you, ragging on you, you know they're not a safe person. Regardless of whether you can get in or out of the situation, you become very aware that this is not a safe, comforting haven, and you generally do not make yourself as vulnerable to that person. Now, 17. The defendant saw him doing that and decided to zip the suitcase shut while the decedent was inside it. They were both laughing, and there was still no animus between them on this day. The defendant states that she did not zip it completely shut, and the decedent was able to poke a couple fingers through the gap left by the zipper. 18. And then the decedent said he could not breathe. The decedent obviously got mad about not being able to breathe. The decedent's getting madder made the defendant get mad. This reminded her of past, DV the decedent had committed against her, causing her to be unable to breathe at those times. This made her angry. The defendant shook the suitcase. She lost control and the suitcase flipped. She hit the decedent's fingertip with a wooden baseball bat that was in the room. Now, in my personal opinion, the way I see that, she was mad prior to. And again, I can only go on what was on the video, but the decedent did not sound angry to me. The decedent sounded panicked, he sounded forlorn, he sounded hopeless, he sounded pleading, he sounded pitiful, but he did not sound angry to me. And the only way, in my opinion, that you could make this work is if Sarah had the fact pattern would almost have to completely change in this history. But let's say that Jorge was the only one that had a history of laying hands. There was no mutual combativeness whatsoever. They were playing around and they both thought it would be funny to get him in the suitcase. Now, he gets upset because he can't get out. And maybe Sarah is again panicking, trying to get him out of the zipper. And he starts saying, you know, I am going to do X, Y, and Z, or Z, depending on where you live, uh, to you when I get out of here. You are going to rue the day. You are going to be in so much trouble. You know exactly what happens when I get mad. Then I can sort of see what happened. Then I can see that you would be paralyzed with fear. If you have seen, angry eyes, that kind of thing, then I could see that. But the problem with Sarah is that those fact patterns have not been laid. The fact patterns that have been laid is that she was abusive to her ex-husband. Her ex-husband she cheated on with George. Yes, I am never going to let that die. I don't know how two women decided Sarah Boone was the catch of the litter, but oh my God, it happened. She was, with George for 3 years and divorced from Brian for 1.5. You do the math. That's a hoe. I'm just kidding. No. Well, no, she totally broke up her marriage, but I mean, do what you want. Do what you want with that. I'm going to be petty. Now, so 19. So now she's admitting to using the baseball bat. The baseball bat. And I think that that's really going to really create an issue for Owens, because Owens in the previous, maybe it wasn't this last hearing, but the hearing before that, when he brought up that, yes, of course, we're going to be doing self-defense, he tried to tried to allude to that Jorge had gotten the head wound prior to getting into the suitcase. He does not want that head wound to be associated with Sarah, because that takes it from sort of an unfortunate and horrifying passive sort of method of death to an aggressive and anger-filled, hate-filled, you know, assault. So she is now admitting to hitting the decedent's fingertips with a wooden baseball bat. My guess is then she proceeded to zip that suitcase all the way up, and it would not be out of the realm of possibility for the prosecution to suggest that the jury interpret a lot of the very big wounds, the head wound that Jorge, sustained, either as her tossing him down the stairs, which is what a roommate that had the shared wall with the stairs claimed he might have heard, or if she beat the heck out of him with that Louisville slugger. It's not going to be a leap. When you're on the jury, you're not asked, to make incredible leaps, but you can take circumstantial evidence and put Sarah in the room with the bat in the suitcase and, kind of get a Colonel Mustard, Professor Plum kind of thing going on here. 19. Now, after having committed the independent forcible felonies of aggravated assault, aggravated battery, and the non-forcible felony of a false imprisonment, the defendant believed the decedent would unalive her. 20. Despite believing the decedent would unalive her, the defendant flips the suitcase over so as upright, and she believes the decedent would be able to let himself out. 21. The defendant's specific intent was for the decedent to feel what it was like for her to choke and not be able to breathe. She intended for him to feel this 2 minutes and believed he would let himself out. And when that happened, if she died, she died. Then that totally negates the battered spouse defense. She's like, okay, well, I guess, whatever happens, happens when he gets out. No, if you are truly terrified of someone, if you have been in an abusive relationship, if you are a person that, let's just say, didn't even have, you become a human barometer. You become a human peacemaker, eggshell clearer type of thing. You can tell on a sort of innate level when you're, let's say, whichever partner is abusive, when they are getting upset, you can tell. You start noticing the signs. And I can tell you, even after, years and years, when people start getting upset and anxious, I can feel my blood pressure go up. I can feel it, and it doesn't even have to be anything to do with me. But if you have been in these relationships, if you have been on the end of someone being any sort of abusive to you, then you are constantly on guard, hypervigilance, even years later, to have no idea. You become almost an engineer of how this person thinks, because you don't want to rock the boat. You don't want to get anything to get them to set off, and you will do almost anything in your power to stop this person from melting down. You will smooth the way, you will deny yourself, you will constantly apologize to other people so that that person doesn't have to. You will apologize for yourself. You will take on all responsibility of everything. This is not the kind of person. If you are deathly afraid of someone, you're not going to just go YOLO. Well, I guess if he gets out, he gets out. Just there's no way. This has no part in reality if you've actually lived something like this. If you have actually lived something like this and you have been terrified for your life, you don't take that chance. You don't. Let's see here. 21. The defendant's specific intent was for the decedent. Oh, okay, sorry. 22. She did not intend to kill him, and she did not believe that leaving the decedent in the predicament she placed him in would kill him. His death was an accident. And then Northwest, let's see. They had to wait to Sunday morning to drink because Sarah's bank account was in the negative. Sarah begged Brian for money and he transferred some. Of course he did. It is so I will say this because I know Brian gets a lot of sort of almost question because it's been it is such a paradigm shift for some people to think about men being the victims of an aggressive, abusive woman. Not for me, but it can be an entire, paradigm shift for some people. And you see Brian, and Brian's a pretty big dude. He's a pretty big, guy, you know, burly, maybe a little bit, beer barrelly, but he is absolutely, not what you would expect of having someone who would have Sarah Boone of all people, like 95 pounds soaking wet, attack him. But you get into these patterns. You get into these patterns, and I believe Brian was together with Sarah for almost 8 years. You become this person that you never thought you would be. You become a shadow of yourself, and your only thought is survival. And if giving her a couple bucks would stop the nonstop calls, the nonstop, badgering and belligerence, then maybe that 40 bucks was enough to do that. So I don't blame him whatsoever because when you have dealt with something like that, almost sometimes the peace is worth not arguing. Your soul is so incredibly exhausted. People like this are emotional vampires and they suck the will to live right out of you. And you are so exhausted. You don't want to fight. You know that saying no will lead to 137 calls, 953 text messages, and then probably, if I know Sarah, calling his mom, calling his sisters, calling his family members, telling Lucas that his dad hates his mom, all that other BS that he probably didn't want to, you know, deal with the fallout that denying Sarah would deal with. Now, legal analysis 23, battered spouse syndrome evidence is inadmissible if the defense is an accident rather than self defense. Wagner versus State, Florida First, DCA 2017. The defendant's testimony is that she intentionally zipped the suitcase out of levity and while kidding around with the decedent during a friendly game of hide and seek. Then, when the decedent informed her he could not breathe, she intentionally decided, out of anger, to make him feel like he's trapped in there for a couple of minutes while she beat and shook the suitcase and hit his hand with a baseball bat. This is aggravated assault, aggravated battery, and false imprisonment. She stated that she flipped the suitcase upright, saw the decedent could get two fingertips through an opening, and she went upstairs to bed believing he would be able to get out in a few minutes. Now, this also negates the battered spouse syndrome because if you were truly terrified that George was going to come out and raise all kind of Cain after all of this happened, you would not stay home. She had everything within her to go to Brian's house. She apparently constantly, was going over there to escape the shenanigans she created with Jorge. So, if she was truly terrified, there were ways for her to get out of her house. There were ways for her to get help. She had no intention to kill him, no intention to leave him trapped inside the suitcase. And she did not even comprehend that he could die from this. The defendant is thus still saying that the decedent's death was an accident and she is not entitled to the instruction on self defense or to supplant a self defense case with reputation evidence, specific incidences of past violence or battered spouse syndrome evidence. See Lance versus State, Florida First District, 2019. 24. The defendant's statement said that she perpetually lived in a state of fear of the decedent and is not sufficient to allow for a self-defense instruction, and all the ancillary evidence of reputation testimony, specific acts of past violence, or battered spouse syndrome testimony. Quote, however, before a defendant may introduce defend or evidence of the victim's character, he must first show that there was an overt act by the victim at or about the time of the incident that reasonably indicated a need for self-defense. End quote. Holland versus State, Florida, 2005, quoting Quintanilla versus State, 1984, quoting Williams versus State, 1971, and Reed versus State, 2017, Rudin versus State, 2015. Defendant or victim hit defendant with a 2-inch wide, 4-foot long stick in the hand, causing only minor injuries that did not justify the defendant's use of deadly force. So there are other cases and fact patterns that they could try to use to maybe finagle this and see if there was a case that would do this. Here's the problem. I don't see Sarah being able to control this. Okay. So regardless of what Elizabeth Arden and Vaseline they are able to, concoct into miracle potion to make her look good. As soon as Brian gets up there, as soon as anyone disagrees with her, she is going to pull such a snotty, see you next Tuesday, Shanda Vander Ark kind of look that she is going to be charged. I mean, it's lucky for her they can't upgrade the charges because I think the jury would upgrade the charges. She has not a sympathetic bone in her body. This is the problem with this absolutely cockamamie defense. This is not going to work. Now, unfortunately for Sarah, the defense of, impaired capabilities because she was voluntarily intoxicated does not exist in Florida. You cannot use publicly buzzed. I think with her being behind bars for a couple years, if he took advantage of it, if he took advantage of this time to maybe get some self-help or some therapy or things to really break the cycle, I hope that he does that. Because if not for himself, and I will tell you that coming from a relationship like this, it is not easy to be brave for yourself, but to be brave for your children, something rises in you. At least it did for me. Something woke me up, and it was almost like it was one day and said, do you want your daughters going through this? Do you want your kids having to deal with relationships because this is what you modeled? And hopefully Lucas is a catalyst to make him, stronger and really resist her. Because it is so very hard to be brave for yourself because you are so beaten down, you are so worn down, you are in simple survival mode. I am hoping that he is taking this time to be the best dad for Lucas and the best for himself. Your life isn't over. Yeah, you had to deal with this shitty person, but it's not over. It is not over, and it could be, absolutely. Oh, Northwest. Awesome. Publicly read Sarah's letter to family court judge. He has cut her off. Good job, Brian. I'm telling you, move to Guam still. But yeah, out of the continental United States, you can go to Alaska, you can go to Hawaii, you can go to Puerto Rico, or you can go to Guam. Yeah, Boomer, I did see that her family almost bailed her out. The only thing that kept her in jail was her brother would lose everything because he'd lose his security clearance. Hey, I would too. Like, make me. I would take pleasure in denying Sarah of her honey buns. I really would. I'd be like, oh, can't send you any money. Sorry. I know it's illegal. Do not do that. Consult with a lawyer. But the petty princess in me loves it. Loves it. Okay, comparing the facts of those cases, it is clear there is not even the slightest overt act by the decedent in this case. 25. Prior to the defendant committing aggravated assault, aggravated battery, and false imprisonment, there was no imminent threat from the decedent. State versus Woodson, 2022. Morris versus State, 2012. Quote, you can't just attack somebody as they walk in their front door and slash their throat with a knife because 2 days prior they sent you a threatening text message. No, I'm pretty sure you can't. But that was apparently another attempt to use sort of the battered spouse syndrome. Again, I don't I don't fault Owens and Sarah for trying this because they really do not have a great fact pattern in this case. What I do fault them for is the callow and callous, again, appropriation of a story that is not hers. I understand this is probably strategically the only way they can go with this, but it is so disingenuous, disrespectful, and far-fetched that it's gross to me. It is absolutely gross. 26. If this evidence is improperly admitted, it would be a departure from the essential requirements of the law, which would result in irreparable harm that cannot be corrected by a post-judgment appeal. Roberts versus State, 2023, second, Florida, 6th, May 5th, 2023. 27. The state acknowledges that the defendant is entitled to change her story yet again. So if the court does not exclude this evidence now, the defendant should be barred from mentioning battered spouse syndrome evidence until the defendant testifies to something that is justifiable use of deadly force. Ladd versus State, Florida 2nd, 1990. BSS evidence properly excluded until the defendant testifies when that's the only source of the information for the defense. Medina versus State, Florida 3rd, 2018. Not improper to exclude expert testimony until the facts are in evidence. So this is kind of a gauntlet being thrown. The state is going to say, okay, you prove it, you can have it all in. But do you really want to take that gamble? Because right now, going on the test that the judge has to use, going on the evidence that he has to, check behind or check the defense with, there is nothing there. So do you want us to take it all the way off? Or do you want to hope that when Sarah gets on the stand, she is going to concoct some sort of story that is going to meet all the elements? Thank you, Mask Folker. Thank you so much. It's a little weird to have that many me's on them. I I need to get that superpower when my kids don't listen to me after to pick up their laundry. Let's see here. BSS not available if the defense is an accident rather than self-defense. And therein lies the rub of her issue. She can't have her cake and eat it too. This is either a active self-defense. I don't know how one would craft that, but I'm sure that she can figure something out. Or it's an accident, but it can't be. If you guys have ever seen the Theodore Edgecombe case, it has lovely Judge Borowski who takes no crap from no one. But the defense really kind of boondoggled themselves when, unbeknownst to anyone, their defendant, as he got on the stand to testify, decided to claim that the unaliving in that case was both unintentional and self-defense. You cannot have it both ways. You cannot unintentionally defend your life. That's not something that happens. I certify that a copy hereof has been furnished to James Sullivan Owens, and I'm not going to give you guys his address, but well, it didn't work. But so the basic kind of too long didn't read on that story while I'm on a tangent is that a man claims that he was riding his bicycle on a street in Milwaukee, I believe. pulled out and almost got hit by an immigration lawyer and his wife. His wife was driving. Now, allegedly, according to the defendant, he did like 12 somersaults in the air, landed, and was deeply, deeply wounded. Unfortunately, is kind of negating that by the fact that then this man decided to bike up to the lawyer, go up to his side of the car, and punch the lawyer in the face. Now, the lawyer, kind of confused about what is going on, had his wife follow the bicycle, not Harley, okay, to a little sidewalk area on the side of the street to confront him to ask, why the hell did you just sucker punch me? Well, now, according to the defendant, since the man was fairly tall, he ran up to him. He pulled out his force multiplier and shot him. Now, this entire case was kind of going on this whole self-defense idea. Now, the self-defense kind of goes away when you say, I didn't mean to pull my force multiplier, have it go off, but I still intended to defend myself. There are many, many, many issues in the Theodore Edgecombe case, but that was the big one. You cannot do that. You cannot unintentionally defend yourself because self-defense requires a conscious choice. At least usually it does. Not in Rings of Power, to be honest, but Rings of Power doesn't share a lot of similarities with reality. Alrighty, this is the state's response. So yesterday we covered in motions of limine, or in limine, to this defense wanted to exclude certain parts of the interrogation. So this is the state's response. State's response to defendant's motion in limine regarding defendant's February 25th, 2020 statement. Comes now the state of Florida by and through the undersigned assistant state attorney and alleges and states as follows. 1. The state does not object to the defendant's request regarding pages 69 through 71. Oh, let me check my audio, because that's possibly. Oh, I see what is going on. Ta-da. Let's see here. Thank you for letting me know about that. I got a new webcam that zooms in, and I forgot to disengage the audio thing because I am spastastic, but it was all, I need to check that now because I didn't even think about it. And now I have a new cam for when I'm working on crafty stuff. Thank you, Lexi. All right. So they don't object to the 69 through 71. I believe that is where maybe she is talking about the people who were maybe not legal because, Sarah's a peach like that. 2, the state does object to the defendant's request regarding pages 53, 55, 56, and 92. Bush versus State, Florida 2020. The statements are designed to elicit responses from the defendant, and they did. They are not statements regarding the law or the ultimate issue of fact for the jury. At issue is whether the death was an accident, as she continually insists is the case, even as recently as October 1st, 2024, not whether she caused the death. 3, the defendant can request that the court read Florida Criminal Jury Instruction 2.8, recorded interview, effective law enforcement statements on the defendant, and it reads as follows. You are about to watch a recorded interview that contains opinions and statements by Detectives Kopsel and Lowen to Sarah Boone. These opinions and statements are pertinent only to explain the reactions and responses they elicit. You are not to consider these opinions and statements by the police officer as true, but only to establish the context of Sarah Boone's reactions and responses. Yeah, it's such a dick move. Northwest, maybe in a moment of self-awareness, they realized that those were the things that they thought
they might have a chance on. They lost the ability to throw out the entire interrogation. So my guess is they are now going through for what they think they can get. And if Owens is a good lawyer, he is going to be watching what the state, or what the court, actually allows. And he's probably going to see, if I make a good case, if I include case law and can, respectfully argue my choices and my requests, then maybe I'm more likely to get it. I think the state is also being incredibly, again, the state doesn't have a lot to prove here. Sarah Boone made her own professional snuff films. I mean, it's not a whodunit, Lady Scarlet in the conservatory with the stiletto. It's not that. She videotaped her, and you can hear the venom and the hate in her voice. This is not a whodunit. I think that if I put my tinfoil Mostradamus hat on, I am going to say that the court is probably going to allow the statements to come in and read the instruction that I just read to you. I think that it still allows the jury to be the ultimate finder of facts. It still allows the jury to understand that, these are opinion statements designed to get a rise out of Sarah. They are not, law. They are not anything else. They are the detectives trying to elicit to see if Sarah Boone changes her story. So we will be waiting because, as far as I know, there is nothing more. Let me see if there is anything going on in Milton that we need to catch up on. Milton is still far out. It is still not, let's see here. Yeah, now I can, if you guys would like to see it, I know this is kind of a weird hodgepodgey stream, but I can put up, DeSantis did do a live statement if you'd like to watch that. If not, I will be looking up different things. Oh Lord, is Owens hanging out in, ew. For the life of me, I don't. Yeah, absolutely, boom her. The police can mislead you. They can lie to you. There are certain things that they can and can't do, and I don't know where that line is. So I am willing to admit I don't know where that line is. But it is, let's see. So let me see if I can get Governor DeSantis's. All right, let me loop this over. And stop screen, present. I love that I talk you guys through the clicks that I'm doing. No, that was the wrong thing. Daggone it. Pay attention. Okay, I think they might have caught him mid-statement, but this is his. I have always wanted to learn ASL so I could be one of these really interesting people that, do the translating, but that has never happened to me, and I barely understand English.
Moved a little slower than projected, but remember, don't get wedded to the cone. There'll be impacts far outside the cone, and these cones can shift. And so there's not an approximation that you can hang your hat on about where this storm is actually going to make landfall. All folks on the west coast of the Florida Peninsula should be prepared for potential major impacts. We have made a pre-landfall declaration request from FEMA for support, and the federal government has approved.
I don't know, but does anyone hear the word FEMA and like, hey, you're not allowed to curse on TV anymore? I don't know. I think FEMA has done irreparable damage to their reputation. Not that it was great um, in the past, 20 years with Katrina and everything like that, but I think there has been irreparable harm done. There was one debate or something where Shizzy and I were watching, and I think there was someone trying to do ASL for our resident in chief, and it was hilarity, not gonna lie.
Moved a portion of our request for pre-landfall items, and we expect the remaining parts of our request subsequent to landfall for debris and individual assistance once the storm hits will also be approved. We currently have 51 counties under a state of emergency. As of 3 o'clock, Milton has strengthened not just into a major hurricane, but a Category 5 hurricane, and not just a Category 5 hurricane, but a very strong 175 mile per hour sustained wind Category 5 hurricane. Now, there's a lot of uncertainty about what is going to happen in terms of this track. It is predicted that this will weaken, but it was not predicted that it would get this strong to begin with. So we can hope and pray that it does weaken. But as of right now, this is a ferocious hurricane. It is currently a little less than 700 miles southwest of Tampa. Storm surge watch has been issued for the Florida Gulf Coast from mainland Monroe County to the Dixie-Levy County line. Possibility of 8 to 12 feet of storm surge is forecast from the Anclote River to Englewood.
What I will say, being a crazy giant news and weather freak, I watch Ryan Hall like it's my job. But the eye of this storm is incredibly tight and compact. I think it's only 3.8 miles in width. And that is really very unusual. That's causing a lot of torque and quickness in the rotation. These are all very technical terms. I'm like that chick from Mean Girls. It's raining outside.
Including Tampa Bay. 5 to 10 foot peak storm surge is forecast from Yankeetown southward to the Anclote River and from Englewood southward to Bonita Beach, including Charlotte Harbor. And those numbers can change and they can go up in certain areas depending on how the storm ultimately approaches the Florida Peninsula. Hurricane watches have been issued for portions of west central Florida and the Nature Coast. Tropical storm watches extend further south and north through southwest Florida and the Keys and along northern Florida. The Florida Division of Emergency Management is actively addressing storm-related resource requests. They're currently in the process of fulfilling 850 missions. They've deployed everything from sandbags to shelf-stable meals to tens of thousands of water bottles to thousands of tarps. We've already sent truckloads of food and water to Central Florida in preparation for points of distribution site subsequent to the storm hitting. We're also coordinating.
I will say this is very comforting, regardless of where you fall on the political divide. And I know a lot of people here, so there are going to be people that are on a lot of sides. But I will say it is comforting to see this level of sort of forward planning and communication with the residents that are going to be affected. I really like that, look, these could all be pretty words. I don't live in Florida. I don't know if, when does the talk match the walk? From what I've seen, it sort of does. But again, I don't live there, so I don't know. But to have, leaders and all these disparate sort of agencies, it looks like the National Guard, it looks like you've got local police and probably Florida's own emergency management sort of center, kind of all coordinating together to be proactive. It does kind of feel a bit comforting. There's a lot of unknowns about this storm. They don't know where exactly it's going to hit, if it's going to strengthen and things like that. But to see the sort of juxtaposition between what is happened in, Tennessee and North Carolina, and sort of the lack there, because I mean, honest to goodness, who is going to think that a hurricane's going to go all the way up to Tennessee? Uh, I know, prior to this, I would have had an entire clue and a half to think that, a hurricane would go all the way into Tennessee. But to see this is comforting to me, knowing I have family members in that area. And well, probably true, probably. But it is nice to know that there is this level of sort of forward planning that I think was maybe a little bit lacking in the other places.
Coordinating the deployment of more than 2,000 feet of flood protection systems and prioritizing critical infrastructure like hospitals, wastewater treatment facilities, and electrical infrastructure. We have generators deployed to support special needs sheltering. We also have Starlinks deployed in areas that have asked for that. More than 200 ambulances and more than 30 paratransits are in Central Florida, ready to support first responder operations as appropriate. State of Florida is amassing fuel reserves ahead of Milton and staging it to be utilized as needed. Those quantities include 415,000 gallons of diesel, 389,000 gallons of gasoline, and there is, as I mentioned this morning, an additional 1.5 million gallons of both diesel and gasoline that are en route to the state. Now, there is currently no fuel shortage in the state of Florida. Fuel continues to arrive at Florida ports. However, there are long lines at some gas stations. And because you've had a run on gas, there have been gas stations that have run out of fuel, but they are being resupplied with the fuel. So we're going to continue to ensure that we have fuel coming, but they're still coming with the ports.
This part does actually kind of tick me off. And Alice G, I will keep her in my prayers. I know it's incredibly helpless. I did not go over the commentary about her outfit. Let me see if I can find Sarah Boone hearing yesterday, because I know there was a clip somewhere. All right, we can go to, well, wait a minute. Okay. So let's,
killing her boyfriend by zipping him up in a suitcase
oh,
and leaving him.
let's see this outfit of par excellence. What in the name of all that is unholy is this?
But today, another delay. So in the past, we've had lots of delays because
Okay, of all the colors that this chick who is so vain and so upset, do you notice that she's wearing a shirt nearly identical to Detective Great Hair? Because I noticed this. I love that I'm like ADHD, and then someone mentions something about Sarah, and I am like squirrel. But I do believe that Detective Greathair was wearing a sort of similar navy shirt. It is remarkable that Sarah doesn't have an original thought in her body. Yeah, yes. And Nanny Go, I did a story about that. What does get me upset, and I did say this on Mornings with Mo, is that you have these officials. You had the mayor of, Tampa basically say, if you stay here, you are not going to make it out. The problem with that is that, in fact, there are highways backed up. There are people that have run out of gas. I know they're addressing those issues, but a traffic jam that goes, 100 miles does not, go away and dissipate overnight. It's not so much that. I find it very interesting that she is trying to copy Detective Great Hair, in my opinion. It looks like she looks presentable. My problem is that regardless of what you package this woman in, it is, her smugly attitude is going to ooze out of her from, nonverbal things where she's probably going to shake her head when Brian says something, or, if the experts disagree with her, she's going to, you know, she is not going to be able to handle certain hard truths that the state is going to present because the state goes first. But let's see here.
Sarah Boone was going through so many attorneys filing motions and doing many other things that this trial has been postponed many, many times. And today,
And she
another
decided to wear a
postponement
bra. Isn't that
because
special?
of the impending storm. A state of emergency has been issued for this area because the hurricane is expected to hit. So
Now, it is interesting that she has done less to her hair in sort of the really slicking back with the gel. I don't know if that was recommended to her because it does kind of soften her look. I'm not going to lie. Objectively, she looks much softer with her hair, whatever you can do with that. And, not having it gelled to within an inch of its life. She does look somewhat softer in this appearance. The problem, again, is that you can mask up a thing. You can put her in Gucci. You could put her in another famous clothing line name. I don't know. I'm like Tommy Hilfiger. You can tell I'm from the Midwest. Like other designers and such. But that you could have her decked out head to toe in Laura Ashley flower explosion, and she is still going to be a smugly person on the inside. And juries see through that. I was a juror. I noticed when my defendant had, in my case, had a slight nervous tick, and I could tell he was quite nervous. I tried not to let that play on anything that, I was looking based only on the facts. But as much as, we want jurors to look exactly at the evidence, these cues for her to try to do this battered spouse is just exactly like what Branca says all the time. In order to, win a self-defense case, paramount among anything is that you believe, trust, and empathize with the defendant. Sarah Boone doesn't have that ability. I want her to have a full use of her due process. I want her to have a, flawless trial. But the problem is that in order to get someone to believe an abused spouse, thing or self-defense, you need to be believable, sympathetic. You need to, be able to engender a sympathy and empathy. And Sarah just doesn't for me. And she may for other people. I do not intend for everyone to believe just like I do. I know there are people that see it completely opposite of me, and that is a-okay. I don't quite get it, but I'm not going to say you can't think that way, because it just is what it is. We all have different opinions. What I can tell you is if I were a potential juror on this case, I am going to notice when she has these almost involuntary reactions to hearing something she doesn't like. She does this kind of She does this, and unless her lawyers have really, really worked with her and said, "Sarah, when we are in this courthouse, you will look sympathetic." That means no. And they've had maybe that's what that yelling thing was about. He was, telling her all the things that the state is going to tell her. And then she was having to not react, and she can't do that. It seems incredibly risky, incredibly detrimental to your case to have this be how you are going to engineer it. But that's just my opinion.
So today, the chief judge presiding over this case said that jury selection, which was supposed to take place this morning, now will not take place until next Monday. Let's go ahead and listen to the chief judge as he made this announcement today in court.
Due to the potential storm and the ramifications
Eyebrows
of
of
it,
justice.
the court is going to postpone jury selection in this matter till Monday, October 14th at 9 a.m.
Now, I will say, as much as, I was looking forward to Sarah's case starting this week, I am very, very, impressed with this judge. I have been impressed with this judge since the beginning. I think he has been firm, but given all of his reasons for being as firm and harsh with Sarah as he has been, as far as making her pro se. And I also think that it was an incredibly wise decision to postpone this, especially given that these jury members, these lawyers, and even I'm guessing the prisoners are having to prepare for this incredibly dangerous storm. So I actually really appreciate the way he has run this trial, because I believe Judge Wooten, he seemed a little wishy-washy to me. He seemed a little wishy-washy. And Fundian, I'm freaked out because I live on the West Coast near Daytona, so I might not have time to go back to at the end of the month because I'm surrounded on four sides by swamp and beach on one side. I am so sorry, Fundian. I hope that everything is okay and it just doesn't, do anything terrible. I don't know. That's the worst part about this, is that I've met so many incredible people that are affected by this, and you feel so helpless. You feel so incredibly without power to help people. And that's why I say, for me personally, I pray, I keep people in my thoughts, near my heart, because it's a way that I feel like I'm doing a little something. I know local churches around me are collecting donations and trying to get those out to different people. And, we are all about that over here. And really, well, in the Midwest, I mean, we will love you and we will send you a bunch of casseroles. That's just how it is. The entire storm, line would be getting bunches and bunches of casseroles that can be cooked on grills if I were in charge of things, because that's just how, Midwest people generally are. We're like, hey, we don't need this, take this and take this. And by the way, will this help you? Or at least that's the people I know, regardless of race, creed, color, blah, 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 in the Midwest. So absolutely, be careful, be safe, don't take any unusual chances. I tell this to my daughters, and I will tell this to you guys. Don't try to drive through standing water. Please don't. You will not. It is dangerous. It is bad. Do not get your car swept out. So on that note, I think that is all the Sarah news. I find it interesting that she damn near copied Detective Goodhair with her outfit. I can only imagine who she's going to try to copy next week. And hopefully the judge will let us, stream jury selection, because I do think that it would be interesting to hear the sort of strategy and what the defense is looking for and what the state is looking for, because I think that you can learn a lot about the sort of strategy that is going to be used going forward, listening to the voir dire. And I know that like the Rittenhouse and the Kim Potter case, I believed had voir dire that was open or at least audio streamed. So I'm hoping that that would be the choice. Now, from AH copied freaking Ava Braun. Who the hell told Amber Heard to dress like, that Austrian painter from the 1930s girlfriend? Because she looked harsh and ridiculous. But she's still pretty. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Again, if I had her body, the shamelessness of the things I would wear, absolutely insane, which is why God keeps me, slightly fluffy. Although, one second, I have to brag on me just a tiny bit in total vanity. But this skirt, I loved it. It was too small when I bought it, so I couldn't even put it on. Ladies, you know what I'm talking about when you've got that maybe you can get it about halfway up the thigh, and then it's cling wrap. But it finally fits. It finally fits. I am so happy. But you guys also know that thing that when you've been wearing things that are so loose they're nearly falling off, and then you finally get something that fits, and you're like, is this too tight? So Mr. Mo had to assure me that yes, it looked okay. It did not look like sausage wrapper, which is always my fear. But I am so glad it finally fits. And, you know, it's the little things. It's the little things. Uh, good morning, Roy. I'm actually getting ready to head on out. I am going to be working on getting things set up. I will be putting up the 3 different projects that you guys can vote on as to what we will be doing for craft in court during Sarah Boone. So I will be getting pictures of those up in the next couple days. And I will be working on getting the whiteboard set up. While I pray for me, I will be trying to follow instructions written for a 5-year-old to figure this out. And even I managed to mess that up. But let's hope we can get those done and get a couple things ready. So by the time Sarah Boone comes up, we will be ready to go. Now, on a side note, and I haven't done a lot with the Delphi case. The Delphi courthouse is incredibly small. The judge is not allowing any streaming of any kind. So I will try to be doing daily updates based on what people are tweeting out in that case. But given the incredibly small courtroom, and I went in there and looked, and the chairs are all wood, it would just not be feasible for me to be in those chairs for a long time with my leg. So I will be doing updates nightly, or maybe in the afternoon or the day after, of what went on in the case, but it will not be a live thing. So just to let you know, that case is still projected to start at on the 13th, I believe. So I will keep you guys up to date on that as well. It's just not going to be feasible for me to go to the courthouse. So thank you all for joining. I will see you in a little bit. We've got Nightly Newsy News at 7. If there are more updates, I might do some Newsy News nuggets. Oh, where did Mo in the Deep End come from? That's actually a great question. So I am technologically impaired. I think we all know this. It's a truth in my life. So when I thought about joining YouTube and streaming, I thought, well, this is like jumping into the deep end of the pool without floaties. So Mo in the Deep End is kind of me just jumping way out of my comfort zone. And I can't believe it's almost been a year and a half. But just jumping out without floaties, and kind of jumping into the deep end of the internet when I was like, I suck out loud at technical stuff. This is the worst idea ever. But it was also, this has been the most challenging and fun thing I've ever done. I've really gone out of my comfort zone. But it's also been, weird, because it's definitely not something that would ever be within my comfort zone. I am not technical. I know people are like, let me show you OBS. And I'm like, do they have one for dummies or specials? But it's been the most incredible thing to have, a couple doors closed, but this one open has been incredibly helpful in really getting that sort of attitude that, yes, things have changed with my diagnosis, but I can adapt and do different things. So if you are ever challenged and you think you might need to go out of your comfort zone, just try it. You might like it. You really might. So I will see you guys this evening. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, and I will catch you later. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others. Do one nice thing for yourself and one nice thing for others. And if people are a-holes, screw them. Have a great day, guys. Bye.